There is no virtue in advertising one's sadness, but there is no wisdom in denying it either. And there is the beautiful possibility that great love can grow out of sadness if it is well tended. Sadness can make us bitter or wise. We get to choose. And welcome to the Recap Book Chat. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited about today. This is potentially my favorite book of the year. Thank you so much for giving it to me. It's an absolute treasure. I love it. It is called Theo of Golden by
Alan, and it could be Levi or Levy. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but a first time author. He was a lawyer. He's an older gentleman. I saw him on my friend Lynn sent me a link, and I watched him on either it was a Zoom or Facebook, and he Facebook Live. He was answering everybody's questions, and man, and there might be a sequel. So tell us
Well,
what.
wait, before we get into that though, I do want to talk about the author. He seems like a very fascinating person. And you know how we've talked about like Tolstoy and Dostoevsky and Charles Dickens. Some of these writers have that unhurried feel about them. You
I
kind of
just
got
heard
this.
I heard a podcast on that, like, we don't ruminate, and that was the word he used. It was Scott Beyer, the Love Better podcast. We
Yeah.
don't ruminate on things, like, we don't chew them. And he said, "Have you ever seen a cow grazing? It's the most boring thing, but it's beautiful. They're not hurrying." And that's what those people did, and you're right, that's a great connection. That's what Alan did in Theo of Golden. It sounds like everything, and he said in that video talk, he did it on purpose. There's not a lot of cell phones in it, there's not a lot of technology, and he did all that on purpose because he wants to take us back to where we're concentrating on people instead of devices. So he did that on purpose.
Yes. But what he was writing about, he wrote it on purpose, but the way he wrote it, it comes through too. So he wrote it in longhand. So he wrote it by hand, distraction free, in a shed on his family's property. And it took over 3 years, refining drafts slowly. And you get that, there was
The feel.
he wasn't hurried. There wasn't a deadline. And that comes through.
Mhm.
And it's so refreshing. It is so refreshing. Just the method of his writing is refreshing. He talks a lot about grief, and I think you said like his brother's death, he drew a lot from that and really wanting to affirm people's worth and
Connect
compassion
and
and
connect with.
connect. Yes. And generosity, humility, kindness. These things are so prevalent in this book. And I just love the guy. I think he did a phenomenal job. And the amazing he self-published this.
My goodness.
And he actually, I don't even think he was going to publish it. It was something he wasn't doing
Can you
necessarily.
you have your book, I've already loaned mine to a friend, but read the dedication. It's funny. I think everybody would like it.
To Chubby Culberson, as a token of gratitude for our long friendship and a reminder just between us that you promised to buy me 100 copies of the book if I dedicated it to you, will that be cash or charge?
I read that and I said, "Oh, he has a sense of humor." And he's a lawyer by trade, but I was just kinda surprised that, but a
No
lot of
marketing though.
lawyers turn writers like Gretchen Rubin. I think the Sideways Stories from Wayside School, he was a lawyer. There's several of them that were lawyers that turned to writing, and so it's beautiful, written in 2023, and
But yeah, he originally self-published it, no marketing, and it just exploded because of how good it is. Organically, through
mm,
readers being just enthusiastic about it. Then it hit the bestseller, then he got a major publishing deal. But
okay, well, good to know.
yeah. So, I was so impressed just by him alone before we even get into the story.
Yes. Well, I'm proud of you. You read this on a trip. So if you're going on she took it on the airplane and she read half going to Oregon and half coming back. So I think it was perfect book for you.
It was perfect, and I was crying next to 2 strangers, but they were on devices, so they didn't even notice.
Well, I will say there's a downside to this book, though. And the downside is my friend Angela said, once I read Theo of Golden, it's gonna be hard for any book to even meet that. And she said, "So it's gonna be I'm gonna be like, no, no." So it turns you a bit of like, you're a bit persnickety after this. You're like, "No, that just does not measure up. I'm
Yeah.
sorry." Yeah.
And again, I think that goes back to, like, how much what was the word you it wasn't pontificating, but
Ruminating,
ruminating,
ruminating.
that we just don't do that. We don't allow space for that in our very fast-paced world, but Alan Levi did, and he's
Yeah.
also a singer-songwriter, a
That's what
whimsical. Yeah,
yeah,
so I need to
that's
go find some of his stuff because 'cause I'm very curious.
and when my friend Tina, she said that this is his first book, but he wrote a little kind of a memoir about the death of his brother, and she looked it up. And I don't know if you can get that, but I bet you can now, that he wrote that basically for him and his parents. So, yeah, he kinda choked up during the interview several times.
Mm,
So, he's very reminded me of, like, David and Joseph, how they cry, and men are kinda trained not to do that now, but
mhm.
when I just read that part about Joseph, when he reveals himself to his brother, he goes to Benjamin's neck and weeps on his neck. He weeps, and then he weeps and weeps, and, the Egyptians don't even know what's going on. They're like, What's going on? What is happening?"
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think that emotion, he has that, and I think you're right. We don't do that much anymore. I have one quote that is to start us off: "Nothing is what it's supposed to be if love is not at the core."
Powerful.
Yes. And that's kinda where Theo's from. I mean, Theo's an older man, and you wonder at the get-go, I did, why is he at Golden? What's he up to? Because he is, a horse of a different color, as they say in Wizard of Oz. He's different because he notices everything. Like, he goes for a walk, and he notices the flowers, he notices everything. He kinda by slowing by depicting Theo's slow walk, he slows us down as readers.
Mhm.
I've actually talked to more people since I've read Theo of Golden than ever, just total strangers. And because I look them in the eye, and then they wanna I mean, and then it just happens. But I think God gave us this. This is Luann Flowers is how I got this book. She said, "You need to read Theo of Golden."
Well,
And
thanks, Luann.
yeah, thank you, Luann. Shout out to Luann,
Yeah.
because man, and I did, because I thought, "Well, I trust her."
It takes place in a fictional southern town called Golden, Georgia, but it was modeled after a real town called Columbus, Georgia. And like you said, we're following this man named Theo. We Very mysterious. We don't know a lot about him. We can tell that he has money is not an object though. We can kind of tell
Mhm.
by he pulls up in a limousine, all these different things. So we know money's no object, but like you said, he's walking around soaking in so much, and he goes into this coffee shop, and just the way he communicates with people and engages with people is just so, deep and authentic, and he's very present. And in this coffee shop, he sees these beautiful portraits that are just all over this coffee shop. There's like 72, or I can't there's a
92,
90.
and
Okay,
they're
there's
pencil portraits. Yeah.
and he is mesmerized by these portraits and spends a lot of time just looking at them, and then has an idea that he wants to buy the portrait, find the person, and gift them the portrait. This is such a cool idea because the artist who's creating these portraits, he has a gift to pull out the good things of people
Mhm.
just by looking at their faces.
And the
So
To the very and not only the good, but also to the very first one, to Theo, to Minuet said, "Sadness might be many things, but it is rarely stupid. The good sadness, I think, is always trying to tell us something." He saw in this one Minuet, he saw in her eyes, there was beauty and everything, but he saw sadness too. And the artist's name is Asher, and the portraits are reasonably priced, but nobody's buying them. And someone asked Alan where he got that idea, and that's in the coffee shop in Columbus or whatever.
mhm.
Don't you wanna take a trip down there
Yeah,
and get a pencil portrait? But
yeah.
I thought that was so you're wondering, And another thing about him that's mysterious is he never uses his last name, ever.
Yes. And people
He's
try to ask him, and he's from Portugal, and he'll give give them a few facts like that, but he's pretty he
guarded.
deflects.
Yeah.
He'll deflect back to them.
And I just think it's intriguing that you said he wrote this in longhand. In the book, Theo writes these notes to the people. We'll take Minuet since she was the first one. He's painstakingly handcrafting a note to her saying he wants to meet her at the promenade, like in the center. He wants to give her the gift of her portrait and all that. Well, in this day and age, that's kind of scary, and it goes really into detail in that first one, and they have a discussion, and you love Minuet's husband. She's a accountant, busy, but she really wants to be a mother. But her husband gives space, I guess, because I'm noticing that we've got to leave margin for things. You know, we pack
100%.
ourselves so full
100%.
of things. Like Theo was total margin. He
Mhm.
was all margin. We need to kind of mimic that and leave margin for people because that's what God told us to do. Love your neighbor. We can't love your neighbor if you don't have time, you know?
Exactly.
And so her husband, and so Theo affects everyone in the whole town of Golden, but her husband sees that everything's going okay, and he leaves space and just watches from afar, and Minuet just loves Theo because her dad is like so he is there is a little bit of technology because her dad's like on his phone all the time when you hear him.
Businessman.
Sharp,
Yeah. Doesn't see value in anything unless there's a price tag on it.
yeah, and very hard. I mean, she's so sweet and everything. So when I got to, you're like, you're almost holding your breath when he makes these presentations because
He
you
calls
think,
them bestows.
yeah, when he bestows on someone, I mean, you're kind of and he does have help. He has Mr. Ponder. I liked Mr. Ponder. He goes to him and and they have a history. We don't find out what it is, but and then there's comedy because Mr. Ponder's secretary, she's like, I don't trust him. I don't trust him. She did not like Theo and all that. Mr. Ponder, this was a quote from him. From years of undoing smart people's fiascos, that it never hurts to state the obvious. He told this to Theo because he said to exercise discretion when you're gifting the portraits because Theo did not think anything could go wrong, But Mr. Ponder said, and one time it does go awry. But he's saying Theo he thought smart people are smart. There's nothing going to happen, and he said, "My life is undoing smart people's fiascos. That's my job. That's how I make a living." And then Theo was humble enough to take. He listened to him, and I'm like,
So Mr. Ponder is his confidant. He's the only
yes,
one in town who knows Theo's real last name. He knows I think he has Theo gave him like financial stuff. So because Theo doesn't just do bestows, he does a lot of anonymous giving and anonymous help to people. So Mr. Ponder's the one that sends those checks. Actually, his secretary does, but
mm-hmm.
they're the ones that are kind of behind the scenes. That now the secretary doesn't know who Theo is, but Mr. Ponder is the only one in town who really knows what's going on.
And in his letters, I'm sure that each person, there was a guy named Kendrick who was working as a custodian at the college. In his letter, he said, "This is the face of a man who can do much good in the world." I mean, and just think what that did to Kendrick. I mean, and then he finds out that Kendrick's little girl is in a bad way with her leg, and she's
From a
not ever
car wreck.
the car wreck that
Kendrick's
killed his
wife.
wife, and he's in grief still, Kendrick is, but and they're too poor to get a law. And he said, "Well, who's her doctor?" And Kendrick says, "There's been a new doctor like every day." Well, guess what Theo does? He gets a guy from Africa, I think, South Africa or whatever, who specializes in kids being hurt, their legs, comes in, does the surgery, and nobody knows. Surely Kendrick can
Yeah.
connect the dots.
Well, and at that time, Kendrick had never been called sir, you know. And so Theo and this guy, he's a janitor. He's kind of gruff looking, but he did come. He made
Mhm.
him wait though, because again, when it is different when someone says, "Hey, would you like to meet me? I have this portrait I'd like to give you." It's out of the blue, but Kendrick does show up and his head's down and everything. But as he's leaving after having confronted or not confronted, but have this conversation with Theo, his head's up and it's like, "Sir." And what Theo does is he gives them a glimpse of what he sees, what they could be.
Mhm.
Most of the time people don't they think they're believing lies about themselves. And what you believe is what will happen because you're believing it. You're not believing in the truth and it keeps you stuck. He just it's so beautiful how he does it.
Yeah, he gives them, like, a glimpse of another way they could look at themselves. I think in book club, the favorite when you ask people who their favorite was, everybody loved Ellen, and tell
Mm.
us about Ellen.
So Ellen is an interesting, very complex character, and she's homeless, and she has a bicycle that she calls a noble invention. She's an avid reader.
Of the
She
classics.
of the classics, and the cool thing about Ellen, and really this was before Theo came, is Golden did kind of take care of her.
Mhm.
Because, Tony, who's the bookstore owner, lets her come and read books and borrow books. There's a bicycle shop guy, and he
Yes, he's
he
really
takes
good.
he takes care of her bicycle for free and gives her water. There's a mission where she could stay, but I think she chooses not to stay. But there's a lady in there that helps her and for clothes and different things. And so the town and the coffee shop. So the town of Golden has adopted Ellen. And again, she's a different bird. She's not vicious by any
No.
means, but she talks to herself and
She walks to the beat of a different drummer, for sure, but
mhm.
they have taken her under their wing. But what is precious about Ellen, when she goes to get her bestowal, she dressed up the best she could, and Theo caught that she's straightening her I mean, she it was special to her, and the way he depicts that, you feel like you are right on the park bench opposite them. You honestly feel like you are there.
So tell her a story. But, I mean, again, a lot of people would look at her and just see, oh, this is a homeless crazy woman riding a bike around. But what was her story? What did she tell Theo?
Well, and it's been, a bit since but I remember she had a child, didn't she? And
They took it.
they took her baby.
She was homeless and she and
I
her
can't remember, but something happened to the man. He
her
was
husband
killed?
was shot, yes,
Okay, yes,
and
that's
I think it
right.
was a misunderstanding, but he was shot, and then I think that's when she kinda went a little crazy, and then but because Theo asked her, "What was the best day of your life?"
When the best day
And
was the worst day. Oh, that's
the best day
right.
was the worst day. So the
Okay,
best
yes.
day, her husband got shot and her baby was taken away. She was pregnant. She went into labor, but she got to hold her baby. And she was just in love with her baby and everything. And then CPS just took it away.
Oh.
And she never got to see her again. And so, well, I mean, that's enough to make you a
Mhm.
little crazy and everything. And having endured all that, I'm just glad that she ended up in Golden because they really have, and I don't know if anyone else really knows her story, but I think that's why you never regret being kind. We don't know
That's true.
people's story.
And we don't need to. We don't need to know their story, you know? What we need to do is just be the hands and feet of Jesus, and that's what Theo did. He was the hands and feet of Jesus, and
Yes.
I mean, she took him on a bike ride. That was a beautiful part of the story on her, and she starts look at the cover of the book. Is that Ellen the feather? Doesn't that connect with the Ellen?
Yes. Because what he again, when he looks at people in these bestowals, they see something that they don't believe about themselves, but it makes them aspire to that, and he sees an artist in Ellen, and she's very smart. Because again, she's a reader, and she can connect, these different ideas and different thoughts, and she ends up creating a very cool feather holder, and he says he sees her as an artist. So and then she starts going in that direction.
And when she went to church at one time, it was beautiful. I mean, it was just
'Cause
beautiful.
she didn't wanna leave her bike outside. She
Yeah,
didn't.
she wanted to bring her bike to church in the building. And there's a little girl in there that I absolutely love, Lamisha.
Lamisha,
She's precious,
she was the
and
one that was in the car wreck.
And he goes every night to her house and reads aloud to her. And I took it that whole experience, and he is starting slow and reading with her, and then she gets better, and I don't think she was a good reader, but I think she became a good reader through Theo's just drive to be so consistent and go, and then it says eventually Kendrick started reading to Lamisha. Of course, you understand that he's in grief, but you know also that Theo's been in a lot of grief. And you
Yes.
get little snippets of it. He too had lost a child. He had lost a
In a car
child.
wreck.
So, I mean, he connected with Kendrick in a different way. And you know that he's had love, but it evaded him. He didn't, it's like Romeo and Juliet, it was not a love that was lived out, and you know that. And you see that it's made him better, I guess, because he can connect to these people. But
In
I was
profound way, and he connects in different ways. But really, it's about he holds space for them.
Mhm.
This is a good one when he at one point when he's talking with Asher, who Asher again is the artist. And I love that he got to connect with the artist, but it says, "But if I guess if a work of art makes us see something familiar in a new way, or makes us feel something we ought to have felt all along, or shows our place in the world more clearly, maybe then it qualifies as good. If it makes us better somehow, maybe that's what gives it value."
Mm.
So and that's what we have through Asher's portraits. They bring a lot of value because of that. Even
He
if it's
makes the
even
point that I don't think that Asher, even though he was talented and everybody knew that, but he makes Asher see that he is talented, because here,
yes.
Asher's put those portraits on the wall. Nobody bought any. I mean, and how would that be, And when
Here's a funny speaking about artist life. It says, "But the life of an artist can be pretty deflating at times. It can make you wanna cut your ear off."
yeah, I
Uh,
remember that part.
I thought that was funny.
Theo said, "It's hard to teach kids the magic of words when they can barely read them." That was when he was going with I was
Mm,
looking for that quote. But
yeah.
isn't this interesting? And this is huge for everyone. What one loves, one learns about. And that's Theo.
Mm.
He loved Ellen, he learned about her. He loved Tony. Tell us about Tony. Tony was a very interesting character.
Tony is, he's a war veteran, so he's very calloused, but with a heart of gold. So,
And he owns the
very
bookstore.
he
What's the name
owns
of
the
the
bookstore.
bookstore? Do you remember?
It's,
The Verge or
no,
something?
it's, carnivores eat meat, herbivores eat, you know, greens, and he said verbivores, they eat verbs. So it's like
Okay. Yeah.
you're verbivore, like eating books type thing. Because
Mhm.
avid reader, but he was in Vietnam, and so that's really what changed him profoundly and made him very guarded, very sarcastic, but deep down, he's like he does take care of Ellen, and there's things like that, and I just love the relationship with Theo and Tony. Tony needed Theo
Mhm.
because there's some things in Vietnam that he's never told anyone, and he's carried around, and he does share those, um, and they're horrible atrocities that he went through
Mm. Oh
and
my goodness.
experienced, and just I the way that Tony or no, the way that Theo holds space for that, because that would be hard to hear, and a lot of us, if we're uncomfortable, we don't, we're like, "Okay, keep it together, man," you know, but he doesn't, and he just really honors Tony, and it was so cool too because Theo, where he's from in Portugal, they make port wine, and this whole process and just the way that he explained it, that it grows on this mountainside in rocky soil, and it's so hard to grow this grapes for one thing, and then it's hard to pick them, and then and then they have to be smashed by people's feet, and then are stored in barrels for decades to get to the final product. And I like that Theo he kind of explains this process, but doesn't it just kind of leaves it there. And he eventually gifts Tony a port from 1968, which was what I think his last day in Vietnam and everything, and lets Tony make the connection of himself and this port wine. And
Mm.
like, okay, how the through the process of pain and suffering and through all these trials and hardships, you can still turn out to be something beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yes, and it was
Isn't
just
that it's strange that there was some reviews on this negatively, this book, the saying that everything was happy, and I said, "Did they read the book? Because there's a lot of sadness in the book." I mean, and to Basil, remember Basil was the guy that his sister got cancer and his sister's husband left, and he took care of her. Now, where's happy in that? And then
now
I mean, then you had the reporter who's dogging Theo. She wants to do a big she wants to show what he's doing, and he tells her, "What I want is to bless these ones I give the portraits to. When you're as old as me, Miss Catherine, you'll have seen lots of very good intentions end up very badly. Intentions that might have been better served if they had been acted on quietly." And you know what he does? He ministers to Catherine, the reporter, because she tells her story, and her dad left her, and I had a quote from her, it says, "It cuts pretty deep for your dad to walk out on you." She's still carrying that burden. So you've got Basil, you've got
and
I
she
mean,
saw herself as a frumpy, poor kid in a trailer, and he had a picture made for her, I think. He had a
that's right, I
photograph
forgot
taken of her
about that,
and
yes.
had it made, and she just said, "I've never saw myself this way," and so it changes her profoundly, the interaction with Theo,
But
and
he's amazing. We should be like Theo because when we're in a conversation, turn it to the other person. That's what he did. He shifted it. She's saying, "Theo, I want to write your story. I want to write," and he shifts it, and she tells the whole story of her childhood. And you hear that. And the same thing with Basil. He's telling about caring for her sister. The husband left. You have all this. It's just, well, it's beautiful. And he can also talk to a 12-year-old kid about NASCAR too. I mean,
yeah.
he's
But
flexible.
about the happy yeah, I don't understand the happiness thing because like you said but there's this joy that's intertwined with sadness, and I think for me, this book has really helped me see you really do have to acknowledge loss and grief as part of our human experience.
Give
But
space
at
for
the same
that. Yeah.
time, while emphasizing hope and
Mhm.
redemption and humility and gentleness and neighborliness, we need to see that it's a whole package. And a lot of times we want to pick out, oh, this quote unquote happy part, and ignore this sad
That is so
loss,
true.
grief part. When really what Theo does is he's so good at he takes the whole thing, this joy intertwined with sadness. So, and that's what he said Asher was good at.
Yeah, his
Was
quote with
sadness.
Asher's portraits invited people to be quiet and truthful with themselves. And what Theo said was, "Sadness can make us bitter or wise, and we get to choose." And I think that's
Mm.
beautiful. And he felt like in every portrait there was a hint of sadness. Well, who in their life, if you've lived very long, has not had some sadness, you know?
Except one, because Asher said, "What about that one?" As a 10-year-old boy, Theo said, "We'll draw him again in 30 years."
Yeah, and there was a one-armed bartender, which that was I mean, he had and he just says it did say, "Theo did not like small talk. He could connect. He always listened with genuine interest, no fakery." And that's kinda what I don't like small talk either. It's just seems like a waste of time, you know? But let's talk about how, your day, what's important, and that's what Theo did. Let's just get to the chase, you know?
Here's another good quote. "Remember, heaven can draw a straight line with a crooked stick."
Yes.
That's when he was with Basil.
And, the way he got people to come together was beautiful too.
Yes, he didn't just have these little interactions by himself. He would connect because when you listen, I mean, you do connect people and we're made for community. And he would I'm trying to think of a connection. Like, well, Basil he was a street performer. And then you meet, is it Simone, who
Mhm,
was the celloist, who's a student studying music at the college, and then you have Kendrick, who's a janitor, but they actually are all connected with music. Kendrick's
mhm.
a beautiful singer. You have Basil, who's the guitar player, and Simone, who's the celloist, and that comes together in a very cool way at the end. I won't spoil that, but
We had a preacher a long time ago, Howard Swinney, and his son asked him, how did you get to be so wise and you make good decisions?" And he's old, and he said, "That's because when I was young, I made a lot of dumb decisions." And that kinda reminded me of Theo. Theo's made a lot of mistakes in his life, and he's operating from, I mean, why did God put the Old Testament in there? We don't have to make every mistake. I say that all the time. That's for our benefit. We read that, we say, "Oh, yeah," because hey, at one time, I might have sold my brother into slavery. It might have been an option. I mean, I was like, "Hey, if I could get any money from him at all." But, you see what happened, you're like, "Oh, no, I'm not gonna do that." But
Wait, take it a
it's
step further
precious.
though. I you're totally right about making mistakes, but the problem is if we make mistakes and we don't
Address them.
learn from it. Because if we're so busy, so distracted, we just keep making the same mistakes. And that was another quote I liked. The townspeople, what they thought of Theo, it says they knew his thoughtful disposition and respected his propensity to ponder. And
Yeah, I love that propensity to ponder.
and that's what, but that's why he's so wise. He did make a lot of mistakes, but then he learned from them, and he takes time to think about things. And I think this book helps me want to do the same thing.
Yes, it does. And when people ask him, "How can an old man have such rapport with all these different kinds of people?" He said 2 things, "I had a very good father, and I used to be a child myself." And then it says he never mentioned that I had a child myself and I lost he didn't mention that. But, grief does put you on a different level when he went through all that, and
Yes.
in your life, I think the hardest thing would be to lose a child, you know?
Yes.
That's a quote from somewhere. No parent should have to bury a child, but that happens so often, and I don't think I've had friends that have buried babies and then buried teenagers and buried, you in your class, we lost a student, and I don't think there's an age where it's easy ever, even if they're 30 and, they're still younger. You as a parent don't expect to bury a child, no matter what age.
But he did say, like, this is what he says kind of along the same lines. My expertise in sadness is hard earned, but I realize more and more that it is a gift.
Mhm.
So it's because of his deep sadness that he can connect so well with people.
And that he's
Because
putting himself
again,
out there.
yes, because everyone has sadness at different levels. And so the fact that he can see sadness as a gift is just
Mhm.
very wise. It shows that and he is 87, but I mean, there's some 87-year-olds that aren't at that place because they haven't pontificated or
Mhm.
pondered. And here's your quote with the small talk. I found that one. Theo was not particularly comfortable with small talk. His own active mind and colorful thoughts were so engaging that shallow babble felt at times like an intrusion, an interruption, a subtraction. So,
Very good. Yeah, that is beautiful. Well, the thing about Theo, I think this book, if you read this book, it will change you. And
definitely.
that's the power of print. And that's why I will say it my friend Angela's right because at book club, my other book club, they had a book and I can't even remember the name of it, but I read a couple of chapters and I closed it. And I said, "I'm not reading that." And it was cheap babble. Yeah, and I said, "Why would I waste my time with that?" To me this is a book after we had just said, "Are we gonna have any authors like Tolstoy? Are we gonna have any
We
authors like
did.
Dickens and all that?"
We
And then
do. Yeah.
it's like a breath of fresh air. It is like a breath of fresh air because it slows you down.
And you get
And
okay, this is my favorite quote too. And you
okay,
get stuff like this, these quotes that you don't get otherwise. This is what I think this might be my favorite one. There is no virtue in advertising one's sadness, but there is no wisdom in denying it either. And there is the
mm,
beautiful possibility that great love can grow out of sadness if it is well tended. Sadness can make us bitter or wise. We get to choose. You said that last part already, but
mhm.
I love the part before it even. So it's not,
And
we don't need to necessarily advertise, but we don't need to deny it.
I think you said once when we were talking about identity, the problem with if you are advertising it, it's almost like your sadness becomes your identity. Like people
Ooh,
will
good
say,
point.
"Well, I'm this, I'm that," and, if you identify with that, that's not good. But you still need to acknowledge it, and that's what he's
Yes.
doing, and all of that I think was very therapeutic for his own pain and suffering the Bible says a house of mourning is better than a house of feasting. Why? Because there's healing in mourning, and you're going up. You're
Mhm.
healing, and it's so much deeper than feasting. Feasting can be very shallow. You know what I'm saying? But if you're mourning with someone, you're down there. You're down
Mhm.
there with them and you're hurting. When he heard Tony's story, he was in Vietnam. He was there. He was hurting right along with him. There's a closeness in that. Why do these people, the soldiers, why are they so close? They were with each other sometimes 1 year, and they're so close, and I love that book, Ordinary Grace, when the father he said, "Every man deals with war in his own way," because everyone and he was giving space. If you look back in the books we've read, you love those men, those strong men, and Theo is one of those, who give space for people to share their hurt and their because a lot of times in our society, I'll have a cup of coffee with you and then go. But see, this time he slows everything down because mourning and sadness takes a lot more time.
And it's messy, and it's
Mhm.
uncomfortable, and you're right, and we gloss over it, we don't but you're right, there's something so honoring to hold space for someone, and then you are experiencing something together, and that's an important part of the human experience that a lot of times we just cut that off.
And he
So,
very cleverly put Minuet's dad in there to show us what all of society is doing now. Like, he's on his phone, he's talking down to her, even at the was it Thanksgiving dinner or
Thanksgiving,
whatever?
oh, yeah,
He's on his phone and his voice is harsh and everything, and I'm saying, "Boy, what a contrast." Because I had heard in a Focus on the Family episode, if you are looking at your phone when you're talking to your wife or your husband, but this was actually about a husband, you are devaluing your wife. Your phone is more important than your wife. And this guy, they got together with the love language guy, a husband and wife team. One's name's Les and one's name's Leslie. Isn't that funny? But they got together with Gary Thomas, and is his name Thomas or Gary Chapman?
Chapman.
And he and wrote because there's love languages, but there's also differences in each love language. And I remember they were talking about gifts, like gifts of service. It could be functional gifts, fantastical gifts, all these
Hmm,
different so it's mainly now, and I want to get that book because it just was intriguing. But the guy told on himself. He said, I am very focused. And she was talking to me and he saw a hair on the carpet. He turned the vacuum cleaner on and she said, yeah, words we had. And that happened just before they went on Focus on the Family. But he said, yeah, guilty as charged. But I think that's the beauty of Theo. He doesn't turn on the vacuum when something, he is focused on the people. And because he's focused on the people, he sees things and he doesn't want any credit for it because like Paul says, if you do your credit, if you want the glory of men, that's it. And that's pretty shallow. But if you do things in secret, you have that full heart. And Theo, he had a full heart. He saw the dominoes, we think of dominoes falling as a bad thing, but in this case, he sets them up and then, man, he changes Mr. Ponder, the secretary, that everybody changes for good.
for good, and he changes them. They get some healing in their own personal lives, but then they come together as a community and are supporting each other more too. This is a good quote, another one. This is from the Lamesha's grandmother, but I love that Alan the way he wrote this too. "Baby, they's justice and they's mercy. If you not sure what to do, you gotta choose one or the other. I say always go the mercy way. If you make a mistake, make it for mercy. Bad mercy don't hurt nearly like bad justice."
And you love and she was a very small character, but she was very old, but she's taking care of things because she stepped up because they needed her. And yeah, she was a good
And that's
character.
about the person that caused the wreck. and
There's
Kendrick
the
lost his
courtroom.
wife. Yeah. But I'm like, what a good if we can just hold on to that and just if yes, there's justice and mercy, but if we're not sure, lean toward mercy always.
Yeah. Well,
Like that.
because, we don't know what's going on.
Mhm.
Basically, someone can be very, that's why I love Brant. Does this go with Brant Hanson's book
Mhm.
Unoffendable?
Yeah.
Because give people the benefit of the doubt, because
Yes.
I hope someone gives me the benefit of the doubt because
Yes.
we all have days when we bring our A game and then sometimes we bring our Z game. We come up
Yeah.
with we're not
Yeah.
really. Maybe they didn't get a lot of sleep. Maybe, it could be a whole plethora of different things, but I
Yes.
think we do have that propensity to judge people quicker. Like, I'm gonna give myself mercy and grace because I say, "Well, you meant to do that. You meant to do that." But
Mhm.
other people, we judge, "Oh, well, I can't believe he acted that way."
We
Well,
judge ourselves based on our intention. We judge others based on their action.
mhm.
I think I've heard it said that way, and that's true.
And then there's a part in Brand Hansen books when he hears people say, "I can't believe she said that." He said, "Your aunt has been sharp-tongued her whole life. Why can you not believe that?" I mean, if we go out and don't expect anything bad to ever happen, see, that's why I think I like this book. It's so real because, like, Theo knew there was sadness in the world. He knew that, and he was actually looking for that in these portraits, but letting them know, "I see sadness there, but I see joy, and I see
Well,
this."
and saintliness, that was his thing too. He always saw saintliness in them and wanted them to feel he did want them to feel value with joy and sadness, but then, like, he set the bar higher. He
Mhm,
called them and you always talk about expectations, and he kinda did that.
mhm.
So he's like, you have the saintliness about you, and there's different qualities of it. And most of the time, no one had ever talked to them that way.
No.
They're like, "That could be me."
Was a time when you think, well, when something happens like that with Kendrick especially, I doubt he'd ever heard someone tell him that he could do good in the world. I don't think he had heard that. You got a lot of, and doesn't everybody have the capacity to do good? To do much good in the world? Yeah.
We do. So we were talking about Kendrick, and this is one of my I mean, he gives this little speech to a lawyer, but I love it, and it's, "God gave us faces so we can see each other better. I used to not look at people's faces so much, but I'm learning, just like I'm looking at you right now, Mr. Derrick. 18 months ago, I hated you, but I never one time looked at your face. But now I'm looking now, Mr. Derrick. I believe you're a good man. I think there's a lot of goodness down in you." And I'm like, I thought that's profound. God gave us faces so we can see each other better. So, and a lot of times we don't look at it. We don't see what's there. We because we don't want to deal with it. We have our own thing. We're like we just want to walk past.
Well, that
Sometimes
goes with that book, Walk Two Moons. Everyone has their own agenda.
Mhm.
And if I don't purposely have margin, if I don't leave that margin, which I'm pretty bad on the typewriter, I just went to the edge, that margin isn't because 'cause you're gonna take notes and everything. Don't you like a book that gives you margin?
Totally. Totally.
But I love that, and I'm so happy that you read it. I'm so excited. I have been waiting and waiting.
Well, I hope everyone reads it. I feel like this is one that it is so important. It is so important. All of the values and the everything that he put into this, it is changing in profound ways. I remember because yeah, I left the airport after reading, or I was in the airport after reading this, and I noticed I don't really look at people either. So I'm like, after reading this, I'm like looking I'm staring people down,
Yeah.
trying to see their faces.
I would say if you read one book in 2026, let this be your pick. If you
Mhm.
just read one, the Bible and this one, just please, I'm begging you, read this book. You will be thanking us, I promise. What about you?
I 100% agree. Yes, please read this book, Theo of Golden by Alan Levy or Levi, and it will profoundly affect you in a positive way. And we're not going to tell you the ending. We don't want any spoilers. There is a surprise ending. I was not
Mhm.
expecting it.
But I will
But
tell you that I put down from Ellen, I wrote down, "Read Dandelion Wine" by Ray Bradbury. I wrote that down because she read it, and so I thought, well, it's an Ellen recommended book, so and we've read him before.
yeah,
He did the
please
Fahrenheit book.
pick this up and step into the town of Golden, and you won't wanna leave.
That's well said, well said. I think that's a wrap.
That is a wrap on Theo of Golden.
Let's read together to grow. And as we make connections and encourage each other, I think we'll see, and you might not see it all at once, but we will, like the people of Golden, we will be changed. We will be changed. And not for the worse, but for the better. And we will grow. And then by our change, we will be able to change others.
So let's
So,
connect to reflect.
and we will catch you on the next one. Thanks for joining us.